The quiet family evening was about to begin, with the sun streaming through the window, casting a warm glow that brought a sense of peace and tranquility. Our home was as serene as ever. I was busy preparing dinner, and my husband Ethan would be home soon. Our son Liam was now 25 years old. I could vividly recall every step he took and every word he spoke during his early years. Yet here he was, a tall, statuesque young man, and as the years passed, I found myself understanding him less and less. As I turned around, I caught Liam's gaze lingering on me, and it made me uneasy. His eyes seemed to freeze for a moment, taking in my neck, shoulders, and chest. After dinner, we settled in to watch TV, but Ethan still hadn't returned. Family nights like this usually brought me joy, but I couldn't shake the memory of Liam's gaze. My mind was flooded with conflicting thoughts. I was increasingly seeing him, not as the little boy who once played under the table, but as a grown man. This realization was disconcerting, and I tried to push it away, but it clung to me. The soft light from the window, the romantic movie, and the peaceful atmosphere I cherished suddenly felt foreign. Then, almost imperceptibly, Liam moved closer, his hand brushing against mine. A wave of goosebumps coursed through me, and an unexpected spark ignited within. I jumped up as if trying to dispel an obsession, my heart racing. I hurried to the kitchen for a glass of cold water, desperate to cool my emotions. "Mom, are you okay?" Liam asked casually from the couch, though I could sense the worry in his voice. "Yeah, I'm fine," I replied hastily, trying to mask my embarrassment. Just tired. I returned to the living room, sitting at the edge of the couch, trying to regain my composure. We continued watching the movie in silence, but my heart was still racing, and my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. I loved him so much. He was my son. I had poured my heart into raising him, striving for perfection. Yet now something within me felt shattered. After about 20 minutes, I stood up and said, "I'm going to bed. No offense. Please stay by yourself." I attempted to smile, but my voice trembled. Once in bed, I couldn't stop replaying the evening's events. What had I felt? I tried to convince myself it was just fatigue, a fleeting thought that would pass. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I had crossed an invisible line. I didn't want to feel this way. It wasn't normal. The next morning, I woke up to a sense of unease. When I walked into the kitchen, I found Liam sitting at the table, calmly eating a bacon roll and drinking coffee. My breakfast was on the other side of the table. "You surprised me," I said with a smile, feeling a tingle inside. My legs trembled slightly as I tried to maintain my composure. Maybe it was just my imagination running wild. "Good morning, Mom," Liam replied, slurping his coffee. His voice was so normal that I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Perhaps it was just my strange thoughts. I hesitated, unsure whether to address the tension or keep it to myself. His presence felt like a lifeline. In my moments of doubt, "Liam, could you help me today?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Sure, Mom," he answered readily, as if nothing unusual had happened. I wasn't entirely sure why I had asked that. Perhaps I needed a distraction from my unsettling thoughts. I kept telling myself to calm down. It was just my son. An hour later, we were on our way in the pickup truck. The weather was delightful, the air fresh and the sky a brilliant blue. Everything felt peaceful, and I felt ashamed of the troubling thoughts from the night before. We chatted about his parties, new friends, and his adult life, enjoying an easy conversation that filled me with pride and happiness. Suddenly, Liam shouted, "Stop, Mom. Let's stop here." He pointed excitedly at a beautiful spot. I laughed, feeling his carefree joy. "Okay, you talked me into it. Just don't yell like that," I said, pulling the car to a stop. As we stepped out of the truck, the silence of the forest enveloped us, and the beauty of nature surrounded us. I inhaled the clean air, savoring the moment. But then Liam stepped closer, almost right up to me. I opened my eyes to find his face just inches from mine, and there was something in his gaze that I hadn't noticed before. "Mom," he said quietly, his voice carrying a new weight. "You know how important you are to me, don't you?" Goosebumps ran down my spine at his words. And that strange, forbidden sensation pierced through me again. I struggled to maintain control. "Of course, darling," I replied, trying to sound calm. But my insides were in turmoil. "You're my son, and you're the most important person in the world to me." I took a step back, needing distance. "I love you so much. You're the most precious thing in the world to me," Liam whispered, and a tear rolled down my cheek. I had realized how awkward it would feel to hear him say that, yet it was thrilling and unsettling all at once. "Yes, me too. I love you too," I managed to say, barely containing my emotions. He grasped my hand tightly, and his penetrating gaze settled on my face. I shuddered, fear lodging deep within me like an intruder. I couldn't believe this was happening. My body tensed, ready to burst to the slightest touch. "Do you feel fear and embarrassment?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. I felt as if every word I spoke could ruin everything. He didn't answer right away, and I could see confusion flickering in his eyes. "It's not supposed to be like this," I tried to explain, searching for the right words to avoid hurting him. "I'm not afraid or embarrassed. I'm just telling the truth. It can't be any other way." His voice was calm, but there was an inevitable, almost tragic quality to it. "Please, let's keep going." "I can't," I whispered, trying to stay composed, even as everything inside me screamed. My emotions were like taut strings ready to snap. I knew he was confused and needed help, but I couldn't let the situation escalate. "I love you, but as a son," I finally managed to say, feeling the lump in my throat grow larger. "I can't let us destroy what we have between us. Our love is sacred. Please understand me." I saw his face change, frustration and resentment mingling with understanding. He lowered his head, looking like a child who had been told something was out of reach. Pain shot through me. How could I see him like that, Liam? I couldn't say another word. I just led him back to the car. We drove in silence, the journey feeling longer than usual. I turned the car around, knowing it would take forever to get home, but it was where we needed to be. When we arrived, he jumped out of the car before I could turn off the engine and disappeared into his room. Anger and frustration washed over me, and knew, how could this have happened? I had always tried to be the best mother, pouring my love into him, raising him to be strong and brave. I had forgotten that I was just an ordinary woman who also needed support and care. Now everything felt shattered, and I was left in pain. All day I tried to approach him, to distract him with chores or offer help, but he shut me out, refusing to even look my way. As night fell, I lay in bed, Overwhelmed by guilt, how could I have ruined his world? I just wanted his happiness. But I felt like I had only hurt him. Suddenly there was a quiet knock on the door. My breath caught in my throat. It was him. I prayed he wouldn't knock again, that he wouldn't come in and disrupt the fragile silence. I wanted to tell him I was asleep, that he shouldn't come in, but I knew that would only hurt him more. I beckoned him and he stood hesitantly at the threshold. Before slowly approaching, I pulled the blanket over me, as if it could shield me from what was coming. Liam sat down next to me on the edge of the bed, his eyes searching mine. "Mom, I'm sorry," he said quietly, his voice filled with bitterness and remorse. "I was wrong to tell you that tonight, but I couldn't hold it in anymore. That pain, that feeling, it was tearing me apart." I shook my head slowly, unable to find the words. Everything was jumbled in my mind. How long had he felt this way? How did we end up here? I could feel his anguish, and it was tearing me apart. So I clenched my fists under the blanket, desperate to find the right words. But nothing came when I hugged him. My heart clenched with fear and guilt. I held him tightly, terrified of losing him, realizing that the fear of losing him was far greater than I had imagined. We sat in silence, the world around us frozen. Eventually he rose slowly, as if burdened by an unbearable weight, and went to his room without a word. I didn't try to stop him. I felt that if I let go of his hand, I would lose him forever. The next morning, I found him sitting on the couch, his face a mix of sadness and familiarity. "I'm leaving," he said quietly, each word striking my heart like a blow. "I packed all my things. I'm going to live nearby." My heart shattered at that moment. I felt a pain that wouldn't let go, as if something inside me had broken, leaving a gaping hole. I opened my mouth to say something to stop him, but the words stuck in my throat. Everything I felt, misunderstanding, bitterness, regret, came rushing out, leaving me speechless. He laughed, and I didn't even try to hold him back. It wasn't until the door closed behind him that I realized this moment had changed everything. The day had shifted irrevocably, and I was left grappling with the aftermath of our conversation. The silence in the house felt deafening, a stark contrast to the lively family evenings we once shared. I wandered through the rooms, each space echoing with memories of laughter and warmth, now tainted by the weight of unspoken words and unresolved feelings. I tried to distract myself with chores, but my mind kept drifting back to Liam. I replayed our last moments together, his expression, the pain in his voice, and the way he had looked at me. It was as if a chasm had opened between us, one that I feared could never be bridged again. I felt a deep sense of loss, not just for him, but for the relationship we had built over the years. As the hours passed, I found myself staring out the window, watching the world go by. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over everything. Yet I felt trapped in a shadow. I longed to reach out to him to mend what had been broken, but I didn't know how. The thought of him living nearby brought a mix of relief and dread. Would we be able to navigate this new reality? That evening I prepared dinner, hoping to create a sense of normalcy. I set the table for two, a habit I had formed over the years, but now it felt wrong. I sat down, the food untouched, my appetite lost. I waited, hoping he would come down, but the minutes turned into hours, and the silence was suffocating. Finally, I heard a soft knock on my door. My heart raced as I opened it. to find Liam standing there, looking hesitant. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, stepping aside to let him enter. We sat in silence for a moment, the air thick with unspoken words. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he finally said, his eyes searching mine for understanding. I couldn't keep it inside anymore." "I know," I replied, my voice trembling. "I just wish things were different." He looked down, his hands fidgeting in his lap. "I don't want to lose you, Mom. You mean everything to me." Tears welled in my eyes as I reached out, taking his hand in mine. "You won't lose me. I love you, Liam. That will never change." He squeezed my hand, and for a moment, it felt like we were back to where we had been before. Everything changed, but the weight of our conversation lingered, a reminder of the complexities we now faced. "I think we need to talk about this," I said gently. "We can't just ignore what happened." He nodded, his expression serious. "I know, I just don't want to make things worse." "Neither do I admitted. "But we need to figure this out together." As we sat there, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps we could navigate this new territory, find a way to redefine our relationship without losing the bond we had built over the years. It wouldn't be easy, but I was willing to try. "Let's take it one step at a time," I suggested. "We can talk about how we feel, what we want, and see where that leads us." Liam looked up, a hint of relief in his eyes. "Okay, I'd like that." We spent the evening talking, slowly peeling back the layers of confusion and hurt. It was a long and difficult conversation, but it felt necessary. We shared our fears, our hopes, and the love that still connected us. Even amidst the turmoil as the night wore on, I realized that, while the road ahead would be challenging, we were willing to face it together. The bond between us was strong, and with time, patience, and understanding, perhaps we could find a way to heal and redefine our relationship. In that moment, I felt a renewed sense of determination. We would navigate this together, one step at a time, and I would do everything in my power to ensure that our love remained intact, no matter how complicated things became.